Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy, Brandy Boy, back at it again with another Fallout 4 video. And in this video, I'm going to be picking apart everything wrong with the firearms in Fallout 4. Spoiler alert, there's a lot. For the sake of keeping it simple, I'm only going to cover the conventional ballistic guns, and I'll be giving them a rating based on the functionality of their design and their aesthetics. Sometimes when I play shooter games, I notice little details on the guns that really bug me. Fallout 4 especially is quite an egregious offender. I can point out something wrong with literally every single gun in Fallout 4. None of them are perfect. Most are mediocre, and some are just ungodly abominations. I'm pretty sure that the developers never even held a gun in real life, and that lack of experience reflects onto the game, which then makes it less immersive, and that can certainly be detrimental to your gaming experience. I know it's just a video game, and not everything has to be super realistic, but overanalyzing things is fun, and clowning on Bethesda is always entertaining. So let's go ahead and do just that. So to begin, let's talk about the first gun you pick up in the game, the 10mm pistol. Although it may be a statistically great gun to use in the early game, it's an oversized eyesore that looks like a toy. Due to its comical size and lack of sharp edges, I can't take this gun seriously. It just looks goofy. I don't have an issue with big handguns, but this one is unnecessarily large. Seriously. Look at the size of this monster when compared to my character. It's gigantic. The whole point of a pistol is to be convenient and concealable, but a pistol of this size would simply be way too cumbersome, and it would handle like a semi-truck. The 10mm in Fallout just has way too much extra weight that doesn't add to the weapon's functionality. If anything, it worsens its effectiveness and ergonomics. If it was simply shrunk down a little bit, then it would be more serviceable. But even then, I can't say I like the aesthetics of it, and I would say it's a downgrade compared to the older games. In New Vegas, the 10mm pistol was indeed a little oversized and bulky, but it was more squared off, which made it look more intimidating. If I had to take a guess, I would say that this one is inspired by the Mark 23, which also sports a blocky shape. Meanwhile, the Fallout 4 10mm looks like a bubbly Nerf gun. It's not unbearable, but I can't say I like what they did to the 10mm. I'll rate it 2 out of 5 bottle caps. On to the next weapon you're most likely to run into, the pipe gun. The idea was great. Handmade weapons would most certainly be prevalent in a post-apocalyptic scenario, and they would fit perfectly into the Fallout franchise. But unfortunately, the idea was executed very poorly. Besides these things looking like literal garbage, their design doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The magazine especially is what perplexes me the most. There's nothing wrong with side magazines, I think they're neat, but why is the magazine placed below the chamber? Even further, you can visibly see that there is no mechanism which feeds the magazine from below and into the chamber. It's sealed off, so there's no way for these rounds to actually get into the chamber. Even if there was, this design is unnecessarily complex for being a handmade weapon. It would easily jam and break apart after a few shots, provided that it could somehow shoot in the first place, and I doubt that it would ever be capable of automatic fire. Also, for some reason, when reloading the gun, you rotate the bolt and then pull it back, as if it were a bolt action, but that doesn't make sense either, because it's an automatic weapon. Obviously, this is just a case of Bethesda being lazy and reusing animations, but it's still an awful gun nonetheless. For a better homemade design, maybe the Raider should have looked to the Looty or Sten gun for some inspiration, instead of whatever abomination this is. I give the standard pipe gun 0 out of 5 bottle caps, because there's no chance this thing would even work. Next gun. The pipe bolt action. This one might be even worse. The bolt action pipe guns are visibly missing a magazine, external or internal, so you should only be able to fit one round in at a time, but due to Fallout 4 logic, you just shove multiple rounds into the chamber and it just sorts itself out somehow. That is ridiculous. It's like there's some kind of hidden pocket dimension which holds these extra rounds for storage. Even worse, you can chamber the bolt action pipe for 50 caliber, and that would absolutely blow up in your face and send little pipe shards into your heart. These things were not made with safety in mind, obviously, nor were they built to actually function too, it seems. Again, I had to give this one 0 out of 5 bottle caps because it literally defies the laws of reality, and if it did work, it would probably kill you. To give credit where it's due, I suppose the pipe revolver is the most reasonable out of the bunch. Again, it's a gun made from shoddy pipes and scrap metal, so I question its reliability, but the general design of the weapon makes it seem like it could be functional. I will say though, it's kinda silly that you can chamber this thing for 308. There's no revolvers out there which utilize that cartridge, and I doubt this revolver could ever handle that pressure. So the pipe revolver isn't awful, but it could be way better. I'll rate it 2 out of 5 bottle caps. On to the next gun. Another early game weapon you'll run into is the minigun. At first glance, it may look okay, but there's actually lots of problems with this one. First off, its implementation. You were literally handed this gun at the very start of the game when you reached the Museum of Freedom, along with a suit of power armor too. It's supposed to be an epic cinematic set piece, but it ultimately ruins the sense of being a wasteland scavenger. To counterbalance this odd balancing decision, Bethesda decided to make the minigun extremely underpowered. It has a base damage of 8, which is the lowest in the entire game from a minigun. The rate of fire is pretty high, but it's still nowhere near its real-life counterparts, and the DPS is extremely lackluster. It's supposed to resemble the M134 minigun, which is an absolute shredder that spits out 7.62 at up to 6,000 rounds per minute. But in Fallout 4 here, they really did it nasty, and decided to make it do as much damage as an airsoft gun. I only ever found it useful at the very beginning of the game. After I kill the Deathclaw with it, I'm out of ammo and I toss it in the storage, never to be used again, because it's just pure garbage. That's another thing, the ammunition for it. For some odd reason, the minigun in Fallout uses 5mm rounds. It's an odd cartridge which is unique to the Fallout franchise. I'm not sure why the US would ever produce a 5mm when they already have the 5.56. It's an interesting piece of pre-war lore. And if someone can explain why it exists in the Fallout universe, then please, let me know in the comments. But anyway, the minigun uses this special ammunition, and it's the only gun in Fallout 4 that uses it, making it extremely niche. And since the minigun has a fast fire rate, it burns through all that ammunition instantly. To be fair, it should be an ammo burner, but its low damage doesn't make up for it. In fact, there's really no positives to using this gun. It has nothing but downsides. Another thing I despise about the minigun is the spin-up delay. When you try to shoot this gun, you have to hold down the trigger and wait a second for the barrels to spin before it starts shooting. It's a common trope in lots of shooter games, but no. Miniguns don't actually have to take a second to warm up before shooting. They fire instantly. Miniguns in real life are powered by electric motors, and they're also exclusively mounted weapons. They're simply too impractical to be carried by infantry. But you see, in the Fallout universe, power armor was invented so that soldiers could carry these massive weapons, and miniguns like this were adapted into portable designs. Also, the giant drum magazine is an interesting choice. It only holds 500 rounds, which seems like a lot, but it runs up pretty quick. And somehow you just swap out the drum in 2 seconds to get back to firing. The reload animation on this one is especially weird, because there's not much going on that would suggest that you're actually reloading the weapon. You kinda just shake your gun, pull a giant drum out of your butt, and pop it in. You don't even need to adjust the ammo belt, it just finds its way into the chamber somehow. This is just pure laziness on Bethesda's part. They didn't even bother to give this thing a proper reload animation. And for one last point on the minigun, you can carry this thing outside of power armor like it's nothing, which shouldn't be possible unless you have maxed out strength. I do like the idea of portable heavy weapons, they're badass for sure, but sadly, the minigun's performance is pathetic and ruins my power trip fantasy. Even if it was good, all the design flaws ruin my immersion. Not much thought was put into this gun other than hee minigun go brrrr. So after all of that, I would say that the minigun is the most problematic weapon in the entire game. I have no choice but to award it a whopping 0 out of 5 bottle caps. Okay, that was a lot, but let's move on to another early game weapon, the double barrel shotgun. It's a staple in the shooter genre, and it's likely the first shotty you'll pick up in Fallout 4. It's simply a generic double barrel, and it doesn't try too hard to be special. I will say though, the design does seem a little bit off. Like it's noticeably thicker all around than what it should be, but maybe it's just bulking season. The only other flaw is that you'll always reload 2 shells, even if you shot just 1, but that's a game-wide issue. But overall, it's pretty solid, and it is bearable, but at the same time, it is really hard to mess up a double barrel that bad. I'll give it 3 out of 5 bottle caps. Oh boy, now for the hunting rifle. It could have been great, but they mucked it up so bad for no reason. The first glaring issue with this gun is that it is left-handed. And I'm not trying to hate on lefties here, but in a world dominated by right-handers, it doesn't make sense for all the bolt-action rifles to be left-handed. You can see that when operating the bolt, your character has to awkwardly lift up the gun and use their left hand to pull it back, which then takes your aim off target and it just looks uncomfortable to do. There's no excuse as to why Bethesda did this. They knew better, especially since the hunting rifle in the classic games was correctly right-handed. Not only that, but the majority of the time, you'll find that the hunting rifle is in a sawed-off state, which is definitely an odd decision. There's zero benefit to cutting down a precision rifle. Rifles certainly don't come out of the factory like this, so that means that the raiders or whoever has been doing this is deliberately going around and cutting down every single hunting rifle in sight. They must be Call of Duty players who thought it would give them a bonus aim down sight speed, but in reality it'll severely hinder your accuracy and stability. Good luck hitting anything with this chode. Even when it's fully upgraded, the left-handed bolt still ruins it. Terrible design. They done goofed on this one. I rate it 1 out of 5 bottle caps. At least it's functional. Barely. Moving on to yet another disappointment. You. Nah, just joking. I'll address the Submachine Gun now. It's obviously based off of the Thompson, but it's like a Walmart Great Value version. Either that or it's supposed to be a toy. This thing doesn't look natural, and it belongs in the uncanny valley because it comes close, but it's eerily dissimilar. One of the glaring issues is that this gun is left-handed too, and the proportions are a little bit off. It's noticeably fatter than the real Thompson, while also lacking several prominent details. By default, it comes with a stubby stock and a tiny drum which somehow stores 50 rounds of 45. It's also missing an option for a stick magazine, which is yet another letdown. Speaking of letdowns, so is the damage profile. Despite shooting 45 caliber, this thing hits like a wet noodle, which makes it nearly unusable if you're trying to play seriously. The only exception would be the legendary spray and pray variant, but if you can't afford that, then you're better off using literally anything else. So the submachine gun just looks goofy, and it's not effective in combat either. It's yet another prime example of a toy-like gun which hurts your immersion levels. 1 out of 5 bottle caps. This one blows. On the flip side, the combat rifle is a pretty good option for taking out enemies. It also uses 45 caliber, yet it does 3 times the damage of the submachine gun, because that's balanced. That's the problem though. This gun shouldn't be using 45. It's called a rifle, yet it's using pistol ammunition, which would make it either an SMG or a carbine. What makes it even more confusing is that the magazine is obviously designed for rifle caliber ammunition due to its size. There's no sense in making a magazine this wide if it's going to use 45, so in reality, it should be about half the width. The only way it makes sense is when you upgrade it to 308s, but that should be the default caliber. To give it some credit, at least the ejection port is on the right side, but where I won't give it any points is for the aesthetics. It's just not very pretty. It looks like something a kindergartner would draw if you told them to draw a rifle. It's an odd design choice for sure, especially considering it looks like a Russian PPSH. The themes here really don't scream American. It looks too much like a commie gun, if you ask me. So this gun loses points for being functionally confused and having conflicting aesthetics. Again, yet another unnecessary change from previous games. For a combat rifle, Bethesda should have just went with the BAR or the G3. Not this garbage. I rate it 1 out of 5 bottle caps. Moving on to its cousin, the combat shotgun. It's basically got the same exact look as the combat rifle, but this one is a shotgun variant. Honestly, it can be tough to discern this one from the combat rifle at first glance because they are nearly identical. That's just lazy design if you ask me. So I don't need to reiterate myself too much on the aesthetics. It's kind of ugly and it looks too much like a PPSH. As for its function, well, I guess it would function, and in practice it is pretty fun to use. Ultimately though, that doesn't make up for its lack of originality. I'll give it 1 out of 5 bottle caps. Now I suppose I have to mention the assault rifle, or whatever the hell this thing is, because it's really not an assault rifle. If anything, it should be an LMG. But I can see why Bethesda was confused when classifying this gun, because it's a cursed abomination that was fused together from other guns. Just looking at it, you can tell that the barrel is inspired by the Lewis gun, which is a British World War I water-cooled LMG, and the iron sights are that of an AA gun. Even weirder, the foregrip looks an awful lot like an M249, which is a modern LMG. The aesthetics are certainly clashing, and this thing shouldn't exist. Water-cooled guns were already phased out by World War II, so why would the US Army still be using them well into the 21st century? It's certainly not practical or logical to do so, and the design is flawed in so many ways. This monstrosity is obese and takes up way too much space, just like your mom. It's so comically unergonomic that it looks more like a blimp rather than a firearm. You could Photoshop the pretty one with a stock and a grip attached onto it, then place the picture next to the Fallout 4 assault rifle, and I would not be able to tell the difference. The side magazine is an odd choice too, and I would let it pass, but I can tell the only reason this design choice was made was so that they could reuse animations from the pipe gun. It's another lazy and goofy design from Bethesda. It doesn't really fit the theme, nor does it make sense, especially considering that guns like the G3 and M16 were present in previous games. I can only assume that this special assault rifle was created later in the timeline, but the question is why? It's regressive in every aspect, and sports no advantages over the already well-established and combat-proven assault rifles. I really hope this one gets retconned out of the Fallout lore. It seems like a fever dream for sure. And after this video, I'm gonna pretend like it never existed. With all of that being said, the assault rifle gets 0 out of 5 bottle caps, because it is the ugliest gun in the entire game. Now that we're done with that, hopefully I never have to lay my eyes upon that abomination ever again. Let's take a moment and cleanse our eyes with some bleach. I'll give you all a break and review the Deliverer. This little pocket pistol is based on the Walther PPK, and it's a pretty good representation overall. I do have a couple of complaints though. It's chambered for the 10mm cartridge, and the magazine somehow holds 12 rounds, but that's just not possible. In reality, the PPK commonly uses 32 or 380, and it can only hold 7 or 8 rounds in the standard magazine. So I have no clue how this tiny magazine could hold 12 rounds of 10mm. It may not be a game breaker, but I will have to deduct a few points for that. Other than that little nitpick, it's a pretty good gun, and it's one of the better ones in Fallout for sure. I'll be nice this time, and rate it 4 out of 5 bottle caps. On to the next one, the 44 Revolver. This one is based on the Smith & Wesson Model 29, and it's yet another fair representation, so I don't have too much to rant about. The only gripe I have is that it's forever stuck in single action, when it should be capable of double action. You can choose to fire double action revolvers in single action if you so wish, but it's just a little disappointing that you can't use it to its full potential. Also, when reloading it, you'll always reload 6 rounds, which is odd, but it does work. And I would assume there's a speed loader involved in that, but if you slow it down, you can see that there is indeed no speed loader. Or maybe it's just got that invisible paint job on it. But no, your character just shoves all 6 rounds right into the cylinder simultaneously with their bare hands. I suppose they're just really good with their fingers. Yet again, another prime example of laziness from Bethesda. Overall though, the 44 is pretty good, and it is serviceable. I shall stay benevolent, and give this one 3 out of 5 bottle caps. So that covers all the guns from the base game, but I haven't forgotten about the DLC. Let's start with the Radium Rifle. This one's pretty interesting because it deals radiation and ballistic damage. It's actually based on the Volkssturmgewehr, which is a historical World War II weapon. In Fallout 4 here, it's been modified to make use of some kind of technology which imbues it with the power of radiation. I'm not sure why that would be necessary, but I suppose that's something the children of Adam would do. They do like their radiation after all. However, I have no clue how this contraption would actually function. It just seems like a whole bunch of extra work for not much payout. The Volkssturmgewehr in particular is also an odd choice considering that it's a rather rare German weapon. So how did all the children of Adam get these guns in the first place? It's not like they ordered them from across the ocean. They even had to modify the weapon to use 45, because its native 7.92 Kurz cartridge would not be circulating in the Commonwealth. And for some odd reason, they decided to take off the iron sights on this gun, because, aiming is overrated, I suppose? Other than all that nonsense, the Radium Rifle is not too bad. I can appreciate the idea of turning an old gun into something new, but this one just seems out of place. I'll, give it, 1.5 bottle caps. And now for the lever action. At first glance, it looks fine, but this is Fallout 4, so it's got the ejection port on the wrong side, as usual. You can tell it's noticeably inspired by the Marlin lever action, and while it does look plenty different, it still looks pretty good, and I see no problems with it whatsoever. That's what I would say if I didn't know how to count. It appears Bethesda doesn't know simple math, because with the lever action, your player will always reload 5 rounds into the tube, no matter what. Even if you only shot 1 round, you will still load 5 whole rounds, which is physically impossible. I'm not sure where those extra rounds would even go. Perhaps they get warped into that special pocket dimension like I mentioned earlier. That's the only lore explanation that I can think of, but no. There's no justifying this. To make matters even worse, when you upgrade the weapon with a longer magazine tube, it doesn't actually extend your magazine. I remember that the first time I picked it up, I was so excited to get to use this badass lever action, but after I reloaded it for the first time, I was struck with overwhelming disappointment, and my immersion was completely shattered. It seriously pains my soul to watch as my character unimmersively reloads the incorrect amount of rounds. Literally unplayable. Not only does it break your immersion, but it also makes the gun weaker due to its artificially prolonged reload. What's especially puzzling is that New Vegas had a working bullet-counted reload on its lever action, so Bethesda has the technology to implement this mechanic, they just simply refuse to do it for Fallout 4. Whatever the reasoning may be, it was a stupid decision. And it's just another example of their laziness and lack of attention to detail. They did finally fix the problem though. In Fallout 76, that is. They patched the lever action reload to work properly, but they forgot about Fallout 4 though. But I guess that doesn't really matter in the end, because modders fixed that issue long before Bethesda ever addressed it. Maybe I'm being a little dramatic over a problem that's already been fixed, but that doesn't change the fact that my first Far Harbor playthrough was ruined due to the lever action being broken. I will never forgive Bethesda for this atrocity, for the crimes they committed against the gun community. They shall pay for their insolence! I give the lever action -5 out of 5 bottle caps. Anyway, on to the last gun, the Handmade Rifle from Nuka World. It's obviously based on the AK platform, and more specifically, it's inspired by the infamous Shovel AK. and that's pretty funny. I'll give them some bonus points for that one. But it's a homemade variant, which sports a custom design. It's noticeably different because, well, I suppose it'd be hard to replicate a machined AK with simple tools, and that makes perfect sense to me. But again, this one has a left-sided ejection port as well, so I will have to deduct a point for that. Other than that, I'd have to say that the Handmade Rifle is my favorite gun from Fallout 4. It's the full package, really. It's got a cool, rugged aesthetic, so it fits perfectly into the wasteland. It's also one of the most effective guns in the game, too. It's a DPS machine, to say the least, and it simply feels good to shoot. For the most part, the animations in Fallout 4 kinda suck, but the Handmade Rifle is perhaps the only exception. They're pretty satisfying, honestly. No other complaints here. I genuinely like the Handmade Rifle, and while it could certainly be better, it's a step in the right direction. It's one of the few ugly guns that I'll give a pass to, because it makes sense. 4 out of 5 bottle caps for this one. I do like it. I'd love to see Bethesda make more handmade guns like this, rather than those stinky pipe guns. And that wraps up everything wrong with the guns in Fallout 4. I know there's plenty more weapons in total, but like I said, I wanted to focus on the ballistic weapons in this one. Bethesda certainly needs to step up their game for the next Fallout. It is a shooter game after all, so the guns play a vital role in the gameplay. And if that part is shoddily done, it can spoil the whole experience. I know not everyone is as stringent as me, and I wouldn't say I'm super strict either, but I expect at least a little bit of realism when it comes to the gunplay. And that's why I exclusively use modded guns in place of vanilla ones. And yes, before you ask, I will be making a follow-up video that focuses on replacing the vanilla guns with modded ones. And if you want to see another video of me critiquing the rest of the arsenal, then let me know in the comments down below, and tell me what you think about Fallout's weaponry. I'm curious to see what y'all have to say. That's all I got for this video. If you found it entertaining and informative, then make sure to blast away that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this one, then make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and turn on all notifications so you get alerted when I release a new video. Until then, I'll see y'all in the next video.